Today on Storytellers Behind the Scenes, I'm so happy to have Jillian Hartman on the show with me. Jillian and I work together today, but we met at Keystone Pictures while she was an intern during her time at Temple University. She has amazing talents. She is an editor, she's a writer, she's a producer. She's also a dancer and acts in improv in the Philadelphia area. We're really excited to have this opportunity to chat together and share some of her stories about her time at Temple University and just growing up in the business. She's been an extremely important, integral player in Roadhouse Media, launching our podcast, and I'm just so delighted to have her here with me today. Please welcome Jillian Hartman. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's the day after Thanksgiving.
Of course. I usually am here. I'm just not always on camera.
I've been asking Jillian for months, let's just put it that way, to join me and talk even during, the conversations that I've had. And I was hoping that eventually we would wear her down, right?
Exactly. Here I am.
Jillian is you are incredible. I mean, so I'm just going to lay it out here because we're going to talk about a lot of things. But Jillian and I met. She was an intern at Keystone Pictures. Mm-hmm. The main project that, really comes to mind is that 360 project we worked together on, the William Penn. So I think Daryl approached you about doing some of the writing, right?
Yes.
So Jillian wrote this script about William Penn. Jillian actually appears in the film, and we had an amazing time. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that was like period costumes, and there was a lot to pull together for that show.
Yeah. So when Daryl approached me and said, hey, do you want to write the script for this? It was like, oh my gosh, I was so thrilled. And I also loved, as an intern, being given the opportunity to do something that felt so large, which is why I really enjoyed interning at Keystone to begin with, is because I felt like Keystone was continually giving you whatever opportunities you wanted to take. And I think it was the true definition of you make the internship whatever you want it to be.
Were you into history at all, by the way? I mean, because I was not. If he had said to me, Jody, I need you to write this script, I would have had to take a deep history lesson.
Right.
Fast. Am
I a huge history buff? No, but I don't think that it necessarily would be my first choice. Or if I was sitting down to write a script, I don't think I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so invested and love this part of history. Let me write about it.
Right.
But I think as an intern and someone who really wanted to write, having this opportunity to do the research, pitch different ideas, develop a script, all of that was so exciting that diving into the history aspect of it was really great. And then when we scouted the locations for that together as well.
That was fun.
So it was probably one of the most enjoyable location scouts we ever did, where we went to the Churchville Nature Center in Bucks County, which is this sort of preserved Native American land where they have they have this like beautiful butterfly garden, this river. They had these reproductions of what a Native American village looked like during the time. So it was perfect for what we were trying to film of the William Penn Treaty with the Lenape Native Americans.
You weren't on camera there. Were you on camera in that one?
No, I was not. I was only on camera at
Pennsbury Manor.
Pennsbury Manor, which was another location that I remember us scouting for a while, trying to find the perfect place.
Well, it was William Penn's estate.
Right.
It's right on the water. It couldn't be more gorgeous.
Right.
And they have live animals there and everything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, but you're right. They had live animals. They had costuming that we could use. They really had...
They were amazing partners.
Yes, it was amazing how it all came together.
It was a really interesting way to work in that 360 world as well, right?
Yes.
So, when you talk about internships, based on what I see, Temple really has an amazing program.
They do.
Multi-level, like not, there's different departments where you can study film and television, but they approach it from a slightly different angle.
Yes.
Which I love.
And I was a unique experience to their FMA program because I was a transfer student. So most of the film and media arts students will come in their first year at Temple. And that first year, you get all of your gen eds and basic film classes out of the way. And then I believe after your sophomore year, you're allowed to pick a track. So you choose a directing track, the writing track, the producing track, or the post-production track. And then your last 2 years are focused on whatever track you chose, and then you do a thesis film. So at Keystone, it really helped me figure out, okay, what classes do I want to go into my senior year? Because after the William Penn project, I loved everything that went into producing because I really worked hand in hand with you on finding locations, getting costuming, making the schedule. As much as I did the development of the script and everything, once we got into action, I really entered into more of the producer role. So
until you were acting, of course.
Until I was acting, which it was the perfect example of when you are on set, you are going to wear many hats. It was the perfect example.
Yeah, and maybe asked to be in a scene or two, right?
Right. That's how it always goes.
Some things come together at the last second.
Right.
You don't necessarily, you make all these plans and you have all these great ideas and you've written them down and you've figured them out. And Cindy and I talked about this too in relationship with Restaurant Impossible. And you can be as buttoned up as you want to be, but then something happens in that moment and you have to pivot like immediately.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the joy of producing in a way, is being a creative problem solver and knowing how to make, you can plan 10 steps ahead so that when one of the steps along the lines doesn't go through, kind of what you can put in to make that work. It's sort of always knowing sort of how you can juggle things and push things forward. Yeah. I love about it. It
gets your juices flowing, that's for sure.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like, oh my God, this is just, I can't do this anymore. Like you get so crazy sometimes and you're like, oh, snap out of it. You smack yourself.
Yes.
So I just want to, give a shout out to all of the RHM interns that we've had. We've had many and they've all been fabulous, not all from Temple. Right. We've actually had a really good group of different schools, and they approach internships differently as well. But Alex, who is our current intern from Temple, he's incredible. Yeah. He brings so much to the table, and he's really hard worker, and he designed this beautiful background that I have right now.
He did a great job.
Yeah. But would you say in general there is part of that education that you get in school that you cannot get in the field? Or do you think that if you are savvy enough to work your way through and up the ranks in a production world, starting as a PA, which we all know is really an integral role, whether it's in an office PA situation or in the field, right? They're important. So do you think that you can get the same education?
So I think the majority of what going to college for film gave me was internship experience and networking opportunities. And not to say that I didn't learn a lot in the classes, because I did, but I think the practical use of the classes kind of falls flat, because you're not going to know how to handle being on set unless you're on set. You're not going to be able to know how to network with people unless you get out there and start networking with people.
Right.
So
No, you're right.
So I feel like
But you wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity had you not been enrolled in a program. Because
exactly.
I know, like, I have been approached by people who want to do internships, and I will only have an intern, if it's a sponsored program through a
Yes.
school, because you
Yes.
know that they're following specific guidelines and everything.
Right.
But I do understand what you're saying, because it's a very hands-on visual medium, or
Right.
all of the mediums that we're involved in, right? So
Right. Which is why I think Temple's their track program of having you create a thesis film is so imperative, because you're learning how to work with a full crew. You're learning how to rent gear, design a budget, get insurance. Those are all things that
they're practical.
Right.
Yeah, they're working skills.
Right. And then
I love that they teach that.
Exactly. And being able to have professors who have office hours to go in and say, hey, I've never done this before.
Yeah.
What do I do? Where do I go? Having those opportunities of college are great.
It's interesting, though, because, I worked on a project with two partners, and we were in North Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there working in an after-school program, and basically bought these small, inexpensive cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And we were teaching these kids who were like junior high through high school age, who really had limited positive role models in their lives, and were living clearly in unsafe conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So this wonderful Cecil B. Moore program in an activity center was created. There's a gym in there, and they bring kids there after school, even like toddlers that I came and interacted with. But, we were teaching them how to tell stories.
Right.
Because in our world, you can be a natural born storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
You can have natural instincts or talents with audio equipment or lighting. But what I'm saying is there's many people out there that don't have the opportunity or the finances to go to college.
Right.
Even a small junior college, they just don't have the capability of doing that. And we wanted to instill in these kids that you can, if you're interested, work on these things for yourself and develop these skills, and perhaps use them towards some other, place in the world.
Right.
You can go into retail and become a manager, but now you've at least learned how to read people's faces, or interview somebody, or there's a lot of different things that it brings to the table. So I was just curious how you felt about that. Because
and I think we've discussed this a lot off camera, but this day and age, there is such a DIY culture around filmmaking anymore. We have the access to some of the top cameras on our phones. We have the access of distribution on the internet. There are streaming services such as Twitch, YouTube. You can create entire channels for your series right on YouTube, on TikTok Live, whatever it might be. There are so many different distribution options that is sort of, in my opinion, creating this renaissance of filmmaking, because it's...
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. But
new documentary titles.
Right. But we no longer need to, don't get me wrong, film school was great for so many reasons,
Of course.
But you no longer need film school to be able to be a filmmaker or a storyteller even.
But and to just add and put an exclamation on it, as you were saying, having that internship, you access that internship through school.
Yes.
But you were doing things simultaneously while you were getting your education that supported the knowledge that you were now absorbing on both sides. So There are positives to it, but I think that, depending on someone's approach, if they don't know what they want to do, it's a way they can get in and say, listen, I think I really like taking pictures.
Right.
That's how my husband, Daryl, got started.
Right.
He loved taking pictures. And one of his parents' lovely friends actually gave him a beautiful, I think it was a Nikon camera.
Right.
It had been his. And then he gave it to Daryl. And Daryl soared with it, obviously. And, if you have an interest, you can do something.
Yeah. And granted, that's not me saying don't go to film school or that I didn't get anything.
Gosh, no.
I loved my time at Temple. My professors were incredible. They helped skyrocket my career and my ambition in so many different ways. But I don't think the inability to go to college should deter people from seeking out the opportunities that are available.
Don't use it as an excuse, right?
Right.
Anything that you want, you can go after.
Exactly.
And even if you start and you know that that's what you're interested in, you can't afford to go to school, start trying to break in, getting paid, doing freelance, put that money away and go to a community college.
Right.
By the way, Montco, I understand Montgomery County Community College has an amazing department.
Yes. So I transferred initially from Montgomery County Community College and I loved my time there. I think I focused mainly on theater there instead of film, but the theater and the film department worked very closely with one another, which was awesome.
That's just interesting. Isn't that what Rob said? Like he went to Cabrini and he knew it was a smaller pond, right?
Right.
That's interesting. It's, all good information for people to have. So let's move forward from there. But obviously your internships helped you launch your career, right? So
Yes. It's interesting how that all kind of worked because I ended up doing my final year at Temple in Los Angeles. They have a study away program instead of study abroad. So you go to LA, you take these classes out there. There's a lot of amazing networking opportunities there. Really great Philly and Temple community there as well. And you work internships there. So I ended up working 2 internships that semester because I wanted to get the sort of bang for my buck. So I worked at...
Why not?
Right. So I worked at Film Independent in their art development program. So I worked with a lot of their, which is really cool because I worked on a lot of their grants and fellowships. So I would read all of the different proposals that came in.
Wow.
Which as
that's eye-opening.
Right. As a producer, as it gives me now this insight of, okay, what proposals are getting the 5s? What proposals are getting the 1s? What proposals are moving forward? Which ones aren't? What are they looking for?
And by the way, just even knowing how they scale them.
Yes. Exactly.
Somebody from the outside doesn't know any of that information.
Exactly. So now I have this insight and these connections at Film Independent that should we want to do the documentary lab for the documentary that Roadhouse Media is working on, amazing. Not only can I send in a proposal, but I can send an email to the team and say, hey, just letting you know, my application is in there for this project. Just want to let you know I sent it in. They'll flag it then. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of networking is you start building these relationships with people who go elsewhere and go here and do this and do that. But it's always sort of a door to kind of keep cracked a little bit so you can say, hey, just letting you know, this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm doing. Or I sent this proposal and I did this.
But let's acknowledge that networking can be difficult for people who you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
You have to.
You have to get past.
I mean, you know me, I'll talk to anybody.
Right.
In any place, any country, anywhere, and make a friend. And then they also tell me their life story within an hour.
Right.
Or less.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it's always comfortable for me.
No.
It's not.
You have to also push past this imposter syndrome. And I think we've talked about that a lot too.
Yes, we have.
I'm only a few years into my career at this
Yeah.
point, and I have it. But I know you have even discussed having that imposter syndrome going forward. And I think everyone does to a degree.
Well, when you're an independent, right? And I used to rely a lot on my dad, who passed away in 2018, who had been in the, an ad agency business. He worked for Revlon. He was Charles Revson's #1 guy. He built companies. He was my go-to guy, and he's not here. Right. And of course, I have my husband and I have other people, but it's just like you start to wonder, like, am I going in the right direction? Am I doing the right thing? Maybe I'm not the right person for that,
Sure.
And I think everybody has misgivings at times.
Sure, absolutely.
Let's talk about the podcast itself, because I came to you and I said, I really want to do this podcast. And we talked about it for a while. And I finally, again, just from like my coaching that I get, and it's just like, okay, I'm not waiting for so-and-so to tell me they want to do it with me. I'm not waiting, for this or that. I'm just moving forward. And I kicked myself in the ass and I said, enough is enough.
Right.
You want to do it. You talk too much as it is. Put it to good use,
Right.
So it's been really fun for me to kind of get reacquainted and to even just, do the research and, develop the podcast.
When you approached me about working on a podcast, actually producing for a podcast was something that I really wanted to get my feet wet in. So I was very excited to be going forward with this. I felt like I had a little bit of knowledge on it, but I definitely knew that I needed to do more research on, okay, how do I actually help Jody and Roadhouse produce a podcast and make it successful? And I think the biggest thing for us was just sort of setting a date and saying, we're doing this. Right. We bounced back and forth for a while about ideas of how long do we want them to be? How much are we editing out? Do people want to listen to an hour-long podcast, a half-hour-long podcast, just 15 minutes? And the first ones that we were editing were close to 15 minutes, but we're cutting out so much amazing material. And,
and the feedback we were getting was like, wait, I wanted to hear more.
And for a podcast called Storytellers Behind the Scenes, to cut out the stories, how dare we?
It's just we're now being programmed shorter. Right. Everybody's attention span is 5 seconds long,
Which is, it's so interesting because I think short film video has definitely become the new trend. And I almost feel like podcast is the main outlet that people are getting long form material now. And I think if I could put a reasoning behind it, I think it's because it's something people use for commuting.
Yeah. Which we spend a lot of time, a lot of our lives.
Right.
Somewhere community. You know what Tony Robbins calls that when you're doing something while you're doing something else? He calls it net time. Right. No extra time.
Right.
So like when you're walking the dog or whatever. Right. When I was cooking yesterday, I was
Right. And it's,
it's interesting. I never thought of that though. The people are listening to longer stories and things.
Mm-hmm. I think those are the times where people put on Audible books, people put on podcasts. When I have this chunk of time, how am I going to use it? Short film or short form almost becomes draining over a long span of time. And so I'm thinking, when I drove across country, when you're listening to a song, now every song is 3 minutes, right? So you're driving, you're like, oh man, like you start counting in these 3 minute to 4 minute increments. Instead, if you put on a podcast goes by, oh my God, that there just went 2 hours of my drive.
Right. Listen, I when I commute, I start off with KYW, which is our local radio station on the AM dial here. That's news 24/7.
Right.
And it's like, traffic on the twos. So you're right. We're thinking in time to increments. I really didn't even look at it that way.
I think it's been really fun sitting in and being able to edit all of these too, because not only am I getting new insight on the industry while I'm editing them and listening to them, but I'm also hearing the same important point sort of being brought up again. You hear time and time again, networking is key. You hear time and time again, you have to say no to certain opportunities. You hear you have to juggle different positions, wear many hats.
Don't give up.
Right. Make each opportunity count. Be busy on set. Oh my gosh, be busy on set. Like that's the biggest,
That's huge.
You hear it over and over and over again. And there are things that when I'm, listening and hearing them, it's like, yeah, that is why that worked for me. Or that is why I'm moving forward in this way or that way.
It's also, I think, excuse me one sec. It's also good. For me, there's validation there too. Right. Because again, when you're thinking, is that like, this is the way I do it. You'll hear people say, this is the way I do it.
Right.
Is that the right way or the wrong way? Is there really a right or a wrong way? No. But when you hear 5 other people approach something in a similar manner or have the same thought process, it's like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction.
And I think that's sort of the important thing, in my opinion, of this podcast is that there is no blueprint to how to navigate the film industry. You don't start it's such a different industry than any other. You don't start at a certain position and climb the ladder until you get to CEO. You know what I mean? It's such a
it's certainly changed over time.
Right. It's this sort of, there's so many different lanes you can take. There's so many different avenues. There's no right or wrong way to navigate the industry.
Right.
So get the insight of so many people who have been navigating this industry for 20, 30, 40 years. That's imperative. That's so incredible, because you can hear the examples of what's worked and you can hear the examples of what hasn't worked. And, you can take that going forward with how you plan on navigating the industry and climb which ladder you're going to climb and how you're going to climb it. So I've loved being a part of the podcast and helping make it happen. This will be the hardest one for me to edit by far. Because
maybe Alex can help.
Because I hate editing myself. But
well, I felt about being on camera for that Seed and Spark trailer was like, But again, it's like I look at myself in the mirror and I say, you look fabulous, darling.
Yes.
Get on that video camera and do it. You know, it's like you have to get out of your comfort zone. It goes back to networking and putting yourself out there. And to your point, there are so many more outlets for content. If you're creative and you're a content creator, and it can be on your cell phone, all of these DSLR cameras that you have, if you have somebody's camera that might be, sitting on a shelf, they all shoot video, digital video. And there's a way to start playing around, and it's not difficult to have the opportunity to try something.
Right.
I have this sign upstairs. It's a wooden sign and it has, inspirational messages, which my kids, it makes them crazy. But I think it's important. It says every accomplishment begins with the decision to try. So if you don't try, you get nowhere.
Right.
Tony Robbins or somebody I was listening to said, decisions shape our destiny. And when you think about that, it's like, wow, he's totally right. And it's not deep and it's simple, but it's so true. And you don't think about it. Every single decision that we make, whether it's in the production field, whether it's in the production office, will change the course of the direction that you're going in. So if you make a shitty decision personally, then it's going to affect and snowball.
Right.
So, the decision to try to do this podcast to me was like, okay, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
The worst that can happen is no one will listen. I'll feel like an ass and I'll stop doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been so much fun. I really get excited about doing them. And I'm so happy that you enjoy, being part of it. And you're an integral part of it. You're producing it, you're recording it, you're editing it. You're just, you're amazing.
Thank you.
You also designed the artwork. We sat and we had a really, fun conversation. What is the vision? What am I seeing? And, I threw out some ideas to you. And I mean, I love the cover artwork for our podcast.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the other thing in our business is, as crazy as it can be and difficult, being on your feet 16, 18 hours a day, the stress level, being up all night in an edit, whatever it is, you've got a hard delivery, there's something to be said about every day being different. I don't think I could be in such a regimented job. How about you?
I could never just sit in a cubicle in an office all day, punching numbers, entering things into a database. Like, that just seems so boring to me.
My brain just is constantly firing about this project or what I want to do next.
And granted, I think sometimes people could maybe see us working on budgets or a project proposal or maybe a script breakdown or this or that, and look at it and say, well, doesn't that look that looks the same? That looks boring. That looks mundane. You're just in an Excel spreadsheet or a document or this or that. And it's like, yeah, but it's different every day. It's a different project.
But there's also a vision behind that. It's like all of those pieces come together like a puzzle, and then the end product is a film.
Right.
Or a live event. And so, it's different because every project is different.
There's something so enjoyable with even the mundane aspects of filmmaking that allows you to be creative, problem solve. It's
interesting that you talk about that, because this year we worked on some very large live events that were mixes of shooting videos, being part of post-production, designing a set, directing, talent, working with clients. There were so many layers of these things that we've been doing, and it keeps you on your toes. But working on my own passion projects is really my driving force.
Right. Well, I was going to say, I felt that feeling, and I think it's what kept me going down the lane of film since the first short film I made. And I think I always saw myself as an artist. I always saw myself as a creative person, but I would have these ideas in my head, and then I would try to paint or draw or whatever it might be, and it never came out the way that I saw it in my head. But then that first short film that I made, where I watched it back after editing it, and that's what I saw in my head, it was just like, this is it. This is what I'm doing, because when as an artist, you can create the vision that's in your head, that's your medium.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes you can be an artist and it just takes a little bit to find what your medium is. But
well, I think, and there's a lot of crossover too, and people, I do believe that we pigeonhole ourselves even.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, oh, well, she's a producer. She's not a director.
Right.
Or, I remember when I was the executive producer of, they call it unscripted now, a reality TV show called A Wedding Story. I wanted to hire this person to be a unit manager. And she had all the qualifications. She was overqualified, quite honestly, but she was in the corporate world.
Okay.
And had been in, kind of like the news world. And I literally had one of the executives who I had to convince why I thought this person was good and great, actually. And she turned out to be incredible. She's an unbelievable producer, director herself,
Yes.
But but it was just, I've had a couple of those instances where they're like, no, they have no experience. I'm like, listen, you got to go with my vibe here.
Right.
I am a really good judge of character. Daryl has said that to me many times. That doesn't mean I haven't mischaracterized someone. I have. But like, I just, in my gut, I knew that this person was going to be phenomenal. And they were.
Right.
And they still are.
Right.
And, you know, it's just, I think we do pigeonhole ourselves, and we get pigeonholed because that's what's being reflected back to us is no, that won't work. Well yeah, I was that's why I like having my own company.
Right.
Because nobody can say to me, no, you can't try that. You can't do that, except for me.
Right. Well, and I was going to say that's, in my opinion, where the film industry sort of fails its artists and creators at some times, is this idea of, well, they don't have experience in that. And it's like, yeah, and they never will until someone takes a chance on them.
Right.
You know? And I think our industry needs more people like you who say, but I believe in them, and I believe in their ability, and I believe in their vision, and I'm going to take a chance on them. So now they will have the experience. And I think that's why women for so long weren't getting the opportunities in the film industry, which we are seeing such a change of that. But
there's an improvement, but there's still a far cry away from where it should be.
Exactly. But I think that it falls under that same kind of bullshit narrative of, well, they don't have the experience.
Well, if people keep not hiring a female DP, then where are they going to get the shooting experience or the directing experience? And I've shared with people that the hardest time I had, you know, with that was in the news business. But for the most part in production, I think there are a lot of opportunities. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the opportunities are there.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been lucky to have worked with some like powerhouse women. I've worked with some amazing female producers. I've worked with some amazing female ACs in the Philadelphia area. I don't think I've yet to work with a female DP on a professional shoot, but you know, I've seen women in almost every single area of the film industry. We can
fill every role. Right. For sure.
Right.
I think only one set where it was all women. And I found comfort in that to a certain extent. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I know we can all do this.
Right.
But I do kind of like to mix it up too, because I am like kind of a little bit gritty, and, you know, my language, I curse like a sailor, unfortunately. And I've really tried to curtail that on this podcast. But I do like to mix it up as well. I think, you know, having different diversity and inclusion, right? It's what it's really about.
That's what it comes down to, is really just having a diverse set, an inclusive set. Man, any set that I've ever been on where someone says, we want to hear if you have an idea, come speak up if you have an idea, or if you have like what a great opportunity, you know, to really make filmmaking, because it is a team. It isn't like it's a team sport. So to really make your set and your crew feel like a team, you know,
everyone's input.
Right.
I always tell everyone your input is welcomed and appreciated.
Right.
You know, because I'm looking at it through my lens.
Right.
And my experiences. And you're looking at it through your lens and your experiences, and our PAs and our interns and the DP, and everybody has a different take on it. And sometimes I would get resistance in the field from a DP, like, I mean, not sometimes, many times I've gotten this. Oh, you're never going to use that. Well, how the F do you know? You're not in the post room.
Right.
But I didn't say that. Right. I really learned early on. It's like, you want people to feel part of the creation of something, and it's a higher role, you know, like their interest level increases when they know that it's something that they can be proud of, that they're a part of building.
Exactly.
And so I think that's crucially important.
Mm-hmm.
And I've approached DPs and said, maybe you're right, but just humor me.
Right.
Let's shoot it my way, because this is what my vision is.
Right.
And I'm going in the post room, and that was
Right.
what the plan was.
Right.
But I appreciate your vision and your thoughts and your ideas. So let's shoot it your way when we're done.
Right.
And then I may end up using your way, and I will certainly let you know how fabulous you are.
Right.
What a great idea it was.
Right.
So, no, I agree with you on that. So I want to talk a bit about, and I do want to talk about our documentary. Mm-hmm. But before we get there, I want to talk about, because you are such a creative person, visual arts wise, you're working in theater. I mean, yes. you let's talk about, how we find ourselves sometimes feeling like we're spread too thin, right? But you act, you dance. Well, is it acrobatics or is it dancing?
It's dancing.
Talk to me about all of the things that you do in your life, because I find it to be fascinating.
So I have always had a huge interest in comedy. I think it is honestly the main reason that I wanted to get into film in general, because my goals for myself and my dreams for myself are to someday be the showrunner of my own sitcom.
When you say your own sitcom, you don't mean your sitcom about your life. You just mean you want to write a sitcom.
To write a sitcom and be the showrunner behind that sitcom. So that is my goal for my future. It's why I initially got into film in general, because I have this love for not just storytelling, but the storytelling that comedy provides, because it gives us that relief. Life is so crazy and there's so much going on.
Intense.
Yes.
It's intense.
One of my favorite comedians, he's a now late comedian. He passed away a few years ago. His name was Harris Whittles. He was once asked why people love comedy so much. And we can bleep this out if you need to, but he said, because sometimes motherfuckers just need to laugh. And that's just like, and that's, I think, what, sometimes we go through so much that's like, man, people just need to laugh. So,
they say that just smiling improves your mood.
Yep.
It's a physical biochemical reaction. So if you're always walking around frowning, you feel like crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So you're right. Comedy is huge.
So I think I got involved with improv when I was in college and was doing theater in college. We would play improv games. It was never to a serious degree of, really diving into the rules and anything outside of the yes and sort of theology behind improv. And then I became such a nerd about it. I'd listen to improv podcasts. I'd read improv books. All of my favorite comedians became these improv comedians. When people say, oh, who's your favorite comedian? I'm like, I hate to be weird and like niche about it, but you wouldn't know them because because everyone knows stand-up, and stand-up is great. Stand-up's awesome. But like, there's something about improv that there's this magic to it. There's this magic to...
It's unrehearsed.
Right. And you're relying on a team. You're relying on sort of speaking this language with each other in the moment and finding the comedic value to maybe an everyday situation and
pushing barriers
together.
Too, right?
Right.
Like really pushing barriers is what I see with improv.
Right. So when I first moved to Los Angeles, my dream there was to start studying at Upright Citizens Brigade, which is the school that was founded by Amy Poehler and Matt Smith, and there are two other people that were involved in the creation about it. They were all from Second City Conservatory in Chicago that then took long form improv and brought that to their school. So I started studying at Upright Citizens Brigade, fell in love with that, was in my 201 class. We had our We were going to have our final show, and then the pandemic hit. So moved back here, and then didn't know what to do. So I was taking some workshops and stuff online, and then Second City actually put their whole conservatory program online, which was this amazing opportunity because I had no intentions to ever be in Chicago. It is far too cold for me, but I will do their online conservatory, absolutely. So I auditioned, I got in, I did their
Amazing.
whole program, which was interesting to do improv online. It's a very different beast.
Talk about getting out of your comfort zone,
yes,
right?
Yes, it's very weird to navigate. But you know, it was still a way to release that energy. It was still a way to be silly, have fun.
Right.
Well, and now I am on a Herald team at the Philly Improv Theater.
Right.
I auditioned and got onto one
What
of their.
does that mean?
So Herald is what long form improv is. So
HERALD.
HAROLD, Herald.
Okay.
So it's a form of improv where you do 3 2-person scenes. That is the first beat. In between that is a group game, and then you do a 3-second beats of those first beat scenes, and then you do a second group game, and then third beats of the scenes that we have seen prior. And those third beats are very quick. We already know the game. You go out, you do the joke, you sort of edit it. So I am on one of those teams. It's half-hour shows on rotating Thursday nights at the Philly Improv Theater.
I need to come out and see you.
Yes, we have two shows left in December. So one will be December 1st, and then we have our final week, which will be December 15th. It'll have all of the teams performing. It'll be a lot of fun, sort of like our last show before the holidays. But that's, you know, a 2-year sort of commitment of being on this Herald team. And
it's a lot.
So yes, and obviously you can walk away at any time.
But you love it.
I love it. I love it so much. I love musical improv. I love long form improv. I love short form improv. But it's also being involved in improv now live in the Philly area has now connected me with a bunch of comedians and actors here that I have the intention to now bring them to the sketches that I wrote with people from Chicago.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Now we can start filming them. Now we can start making them more of a reality. And then there's far less of a production cost than
when you're all living in the same city, it makes things easier.
And I
just want to add too that a lot of people in our industry have a side hustle.
Yes.
Right. So you're working with Roadhouse Media with me part-time. You may, you've come to me a couple of times or whatever and said, hey, I have a job I could do. It's, 5 days. I know it's not the best time in the world to do it, and I've always said yes.
Yes.
Why? Because I've always had side hustles.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps you engaged. It keeps you fresh. It keeps you networking with people. We never know what life has in store for us at the end of the day. And so, even with the documentary, we're opening doors by networking with people that we might not, necessarily come in contact with. So for you, I love the fact that you're out there doing other things. Yeah. It's also fulfilling you as a human being.
Right.
And then I think it's great.
Yeah. I love it. It makes me so excited. The joy of performing live in front of an audience again is you can't explain it. It's so enjoyable.
It's thrilling. I mean, I sang in a band.
Yes.
And I act in I was in theater, and there's nothing like a live audience. And even as a producer director,
right.
That big show that I just did,
right.
There was nothing better than hearing cheers and people carrying on and excited about what they're seeing. There's just that it's a thrill, right?
Absolutely.
It's a rush.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's next with your acting? If your last 2 shows are December, are you going to do something else?
So we will have the holidays off, and then I think mid-January we pick back up. And then I am also a dancer. So
I want to know about this.
Yeah, so I've been dancing probably my entire life. I did it in a lot of plays and stuff growing up as well. And then probably 10 years ago, I started a journey of aerial arts, which is sort of circus stuff. So you think pole dancing, the aerial hoop, the aerial silks. I went to a class on a whim and just really fell in love with it.
That's so awesome.
I'm one of those people where I love working out, I love being active, but I have to trick myself.
Wait, is this going to sound kinky? I've always wanted to be a pole dancer.
You should try it. It's so fun. I have one in my like back here.
I'm serious. I have talked about it many, many times because I know it's incredibly physically challenging. You have to use every body part.
Yeah. Well, and what's great is it's truly something that women, men of all ages can do. And it's a great.
You have to build up to it though, because like, isn't it hard on your shoulders?
It is, but you can you can build it. You know, there's beginning stage, and I think that's what I loved about it so much was that the growth of it comes from yourself. So you might get there and you're like, okay, cool. I spun around the pole, or I got on the hoop, or I did this, and it was fun, but maybe I didn't look super graceful. And then the next class you go, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel a little stronger. I was able to lift my legs, or I was able to do this or to do that. So, you know, the
you
progress,
push yourself.
Right. The progress is sometimes gradual, but it comes, and it's so amazing. And I think I had the studio that I went to, I found this really supportive group of women there that, you know, it was sort of this sisterhood like no other, that really just supported you and were there for you. And the first time, maybe they're doing all these crazy tricks, but then the first time that someone gets a trick that's new to them, like maybe maybe you've been inverting for 6 years, but it doesn't change how excited you are when you see someone do it for their first time, because you still remember what it was like when you did it your first time.
And you're cheering for them. You want them. So I know, like my cousin's daughter, I know a few people who do this acrobatic aerial stuff. And there's like, you call them scarves?
Yep, silks. Yeah, so so my silks are in a bin here next to me.
So you wrap them around like your legs, or I mean, they float in air with these silks. What are they suspended from?
So you have a carabiner. So there's a mount either in the ceiling, or you can get a mount that is sort of that you set up yourself. They're suspended by carabiners, usually a swivel rigged so that they actually spin.
Are you ever nervous about it? Like when you're out there? You have a competition coming up, right?
I have a showcase coming up.
Showcase.
I have a pole showcase coming up that I've been training for and putting choreography to for probably what feels like months now.
So you have a whole music bed that you're
so it'll be three songs that
wow, that's long.
That's why I've been doing a lot of
That's endurance. A long performance.
I've been doing a lot of endurance training for this one because.
So what does that look like? Running? Walking?
So like running and cardio and stuff, just to make sure that I can perform for that length of time.
That's a long time.
Yeah. So
I mean, if you like, you know, I'm old school. I still love watching figure skating, you know, for like the Olympics and stuff like that.
It's beautiful.
And so when you see the gymnasts and everything, and they have a long program and a short program,
right.
I'm exhausted at their short program.
Right.
I can't imagine.
Right.
Like 9 minutes is a long time, or however long you're going to have to perform.
I was actually talking to my boyfriend Justin about this yesterday and saying, you know, I really want someone to, because a lot of the showcases and stuff, like it is sort of like a travel weekend here and there. And I said,
where are you going, to Virginia?
South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina, right.
So I said, I really want to, my friend Diana, who also, she works at UArt. She has been sort of a film partner of mine on sort of independent stuff that we've worked on for a while. And, you know, she had talked to me about interest of coming and sort of being a stagehand for me. I was like, why doesn't Diana just come and film behind the scenes?
Yeah.
Even if it's just filming the travel and getting ready and
100%.
you know, like, it
oh my gosh, so much fun.
Yeah.
And then you could get your training stuff at another point.
Right.
And make like a little story. I mean, I think it's really, you know, for somebody who's doing so many things, which, you know, I am one of your biggest fans. So I just want to keep seeing you grow and succeed. Not that I ever want to see you leave me, as you know. I try to give you Jewish guilt about that. But, you know, to me, it's the best to like be supportive of someone and watch them grow. You know, like you were, I've known you for a number of years now because, you know, you forget about, like, we know the pandemic happened, right?
Right.
But it's almost like 2.5 years happened, but we were insulated and you were working with me in the house and stuff. But then when it started picking up again, then we just started doing everything remotely.
Right. And with editing, like it's easier for me to edit from home. So it became something where once the podcast really started going.
But it's like, you know, time is really flying by.
Yeah.
Because when I think about when we did that William Penn project, when you were still an intern, you weren't even a senior yet.
No.
And look at you now.
I know. And I think like one of the joys, and I think you can relate to this too, is one of the joys of having many interests or having so many passions. I'm always looking for a way to combine them. I'm always looking for a way to bring them together. You know, is it making a documentary? Is it taking these experiences and then turning it into a scripted pilot
show?
Or, you know, so there's always in the back of my head, and it's probably something with being a storyteller, is no matter what I'm doing, I'm always trying to figure out a way to sort of connect everything back to filmmaking. And I say that a lot of the times when I meet people and I have conversations with people is I say, you know, I'm a storyteller. So every person I meet, every person I interact with is become, even the way someone maybe picks something up or the cadence in their voice, like those get filed in the back of my head as characters. You know, like maybe not taking someone 100%, but I try to really digest things from every person I meet to become inspiration for things that I create later on.
That's a great point, and that's really interesting. And it has to do with being observant and really open-mindedness, you know, of like listening and paying attention to everything around you. I do want to just say one thing about your ears.
Yes.
Not your cans, but your ears.
Yeah.
So for anybody who will eventually get to see this.
They're blurred right now.
They're blurred, but every now and then when you turn, I see bunny ears popping up. There they are. So Jillian, you're also a gamer. Oh, they're cat ears. I'm sorry. Yes, bunny ears would be much larger. But I love them. They always make me smile. But yes, you're also a gamer. And I just wanted to point that out because every now and then when you turn your head, we see them. But you know what? That was I think it's a good segue to talk about the documentary that we're currently working on.
Yes.
And I would say that we're in development, but we're much further than in development, right?
We are.
We're kind of straddling the fence for both.
Right.
And to your point where you were saying, you know, you try different things and you like to bring them all together. For me, this documentary represents that perfectly.
Absolutely.
Which is why I said it was, you know, like a good segue because so the documentary is called the working title is The Art of Aviation. And I, as you know, became interested because my mother's first cousin, who is, you know, my cousin, second removed, whatever they call those things. His name is Gil Cohen, and he's an artist. He's an aviation artist. He's much more than an aviation artist, which we're going to explore in the documentary. but it was this marriage of like family and storytelling and connectedness and art, because I grew up, my mother's an artist. She's a painter. She dabbled a little bit in ceramics and, clay.
Right.
But she works in watercolors and oils and pastels. And I grew up, like my kids grew up on set with Daryl and I, like, here you go, hold the audio bag, hold the boom microphone.
Right.
I grew up sitting and watching my mother draw and paint. It didn't make me an artist in that way, because I'm okay, but not like her. And so obviously it runs in their family, but I really had a real interest in art. And, it's been an incredible experience, and now being able to, bring my son Ben involved with the project, and you're involved with the project, and Alex and some of our other interns. It's just such a gift to me to be able to work on this project, because we talk about this on all the time. It's like we have work that we have to do that pays the bills. It's also serving our clients and bringing value to those relationships. And I love all the work that I do.
Sure.
But there's something about pursuing your own passion projects and dreams, And so we had talked about producing this documentary about Gil's life. And when I started doing more research, I realized, wow, this is just such a cool subject, a topic to get into. And I started taking a deeper dive and learned so much about these artists and everything that they have actually contributed to society that we don't even know about. It connects so much to that Hidden Figures film, where these women that you never heard about, or Leanne Erickson's Top Secret Rosies, where these women that we never hear about, who were very much involved in mathematics and, in space travel.
Right.
These artists contributed in a way that actually may have transformed the outcome of war. Not just one, but maybe multiple wars. So it's really fascinating being a storyteller, because having to do the research on these projects and the pre-interviews, where you're just you have a thread of an idea and you're pulling it together and you reach out to other people. Like I have spoken to multiple people who have been friends with Gil or worked with Gil and admired him. They brought other information to me that I didn't even get from him directly, and expanded my mind on just the topic in general. The gentleman who designed that mural at the Smithsonian, which is, the history of aviation. That's fascinating. And I've always liked air travel. So I'm really excited about this documentary, as you know, and we're shooting Gil's interview on Monday, which, the stars aligned, and here we are. We're finally here. It's just like, really? It's happening. Pinch me. Really believing in yourself when not necessarily everybody else or anybody else believes in you.
Absolutely.
Believing in your ideas as being valid, and not allowing anybody to invalidate you. It's so important, and it extends way beyond this documentary or any work that I do. If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, then nobody else is going to.
Well, my mom used to always tell me, you're the only one who's going to be there with you 24/7. The only person who will validate or go to bat for you. It's you. You're the only person who's going to be there for you. So,
and you have loved ones that support you. I have, we have those people around us, and and we're smart to surround ourselves with like-minded people and people who support us. But even those people don't necessarily support our vision all the time. Or, necessarily think it's you know, I don't know, my father, I've told this story. He didn't even want me to go into the production business. He's like, no. You don't want to do it.
Well, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, just the way that I do, where people are like, you work too much. You work too much. You're too busy. You need to take time off. You work too much, blah, blah, blah. And yes, of course I do. Of course we do. Because that's what happens when you are pushing towards your passions and your goals.
And we're excited.
Exactly. Because the reality is not every passion project is the project that's paying the bills. So a lot of times you have
most
to
aren't, right?
So a lot of times you have to work in tandem to pay your bills, and then let those projects that are not just paying the bills, but also allow those to then work towards your passion projects and put them, so there's this thing of sort of always having to work in tandem of balancing making a living and making your passions a reality. And I think, does that make us sometimes work too hard? Maybe. But
and it also sometimes makes us miss, things that maybe others would like us to be a part of. Right. There are a lot of people that don't understand us. Right. Let's just face it.
Right. But I think that over time, I know it's something that you've pushed for me to try to learn, is finding that balance and knowing which opportunities are crucial to be a part of, and which ones you're, to turn down and say, no, I can't make this because I have to work on this or that. Or
you just need time for yourself.
Right. I'm doing that tonight.
Awesome.
Off of work tonight.
I love it.
Relax, decorate the house some.
Oh, fun.
But it's really important to, and I think as producers I think we sometimes have to schedule our me time.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Oh, 100%.
As long as we get it in.
But it's interesting because when you're working on a project, like for me, for this documentary or other documentaries that I'm a part of, or a project that's really captivated me.
Right.
I'm excited about learning more. I'm excited about reading about things. I'm learning as I was saying earlier with history, when I was a kid, I was in the arts program. I was a writer. I was into Greek mythology. I was, into music and all of the art stuff. And so I loved current events. I was always interested in current events. And I had an interest in history, but I wasn't driven by that interest. So there's so much I missed out on. And so listening to Gil talk to me about World War II in particular, because as you know, a lot of his work, his aviation artwork was really focused initially on the mighty 8th Air Force and air and aviation art. And there was so much that I learned from him beyond that. Just his stories are so amazing. I can't wait, to share them with everyone. But it's been a challenge. Obviously, everything that we've done up to date is, stuff that I'm paying for out of pocket or, with Roadhouse Media. It doesn't bother me in the slightest because I just have this optimistic, all-knowing, I believe, and it's like, I know that this project is worth sharing with the world because these men and women who were participating in wars or in those early years are getting up in age and their stories aren't documented. And all of that information and those amazing memories will just vanish if we don't document them.
Right. Well, and I think this is something that we've kind of talked about before, is there's such an opportunity for this project specifically to get grant opportunities and to get fundraising under its belt and, create this avenue for it, that it doesn't have to all just be out of the Roadhouse Media pocket. So, which can, allow more of a focus to then be on the project itself. And I think that's something I think fundraising is such an important aspect of filmmaking, but that's sometimes missed when you don't focus on independent filmmaking specifically, because a lot of people don't realize all of the grants that are out there for films, or the labs that are out there.
It's also, though, intimidating, Jillian, and it's time consuming if you're doing it all by yourself.
Yes. It can be so intimidating. There's so many different deadlines. They all want something a little specific because the reality is you can make a project proposal that looks great, but you really have to make it specific for every grant, for every application.
And they want to know, are you a viable person, individual, company for us to invest our time and money in by awarding a grant, or becoming, a partner or what have you, or supporting the project in general. So the onus is on us to prove to everyone that this is a worthwhile story to tell.
And I think that's what, and will hopefully be launched by the time that this podcast is. But I think the trailer that we've, I think invested some time and money into creating is perfect, because it does just that, and I think as filmmakers, and independent filmmakers, I think that's sort of the goal, is if you can at least invest enough money to show everyone that you're capable and worth investing in, then they will, So, and I hope that we can prove that to be true, because we've put a lot of time and work into creating this trailer. And I think that this will be the sort of thing that will make people go, oh my gosh, of course. Yes, I do want to learn more about this. Because everyone that I talk to about this project gets so excited about it.
I know. It's amazing. Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, Andy, who's one of the DPs on the project, his father was a pilot.
Right.
He already, went out and got one of Gil's prints he's giving to his dad. Right. He's going to get a book.
Right.
I said, bring it to the shoot on Monday. So, he'll autograph it for you.
Yeah.
And you're right, though. There has been this overwhelming positivity about it, which is thrilling. I mean, quite honestly, I cannot wait to focus on this project.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we can't do everything full time because we do have other things going on.
Right. And we love our clients.
But I just cannot wait to have this be like a real, part of our daily routine.
Yes.
Not that it hasn't been, but what I'm saying, like where we're like, okay, let's set up that shoot. Let's fly to, to England. We need to go to this museum in London. Let's go meet these doctors in Memphis, Tennessee. Let's go see Keith Ferris, the person I was talking about, who has that gorgeous artwork in the Smithsonian. I mean, these artists have artwork all over the world, in private collections, in museums, in their own homes, in their friends' homes. And it's really a testament of not just their talent, but they are storytellers. When you think about it, right? They're artists. Exactly. And what that saying is, a picture says 1,000 words or something. Is that the saying? It's their artwork is telling stories. Every time you look at it, it's like you can feel what it would have been like to be in that moment. And to me, there's as I said, I grew up watching my mother with her artwork. I'm sure I have vague memories of her taking me to art class with her. I'm sure it was not approved, but maybe she didn't have somebody for me to be with, but because I was young.
Sure.
But it was always part of my life. And Gil was always part of my life, but he was my mother's cousin, and there's this huge age gap, right? And my brother was friendly with his daughter. Like, we went to high school together. Like, we're family.
Right.
But until we really started dialing it in and just really having these long conversations about his experience, and it's a sickening boat ride, to cross the Atlantic. And it's just, I don't know. I'm so excited. so excited because he has so much to share.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tire him out. I mean, he is 91 years old, but
Right.
he's something. He's like the ever ready bunny a little bit. He just keeps going, 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 going. And you'll see in the documentary, unfortunately, I did not shoot it in the right direction because I was so like caught off guard by the whole thing when we took that tour in the B-17 bomber. And he's like climbing up the steps and he's crawling through it. And all I could think about was his wife, Alice. And like I said to him, she's going to kill me if you hurt yourself, you know, but she's been with him on some of these little adventures herself. But, you know, he wasn't 90 years old at the time.
Right.
But it was just, I was so surprised. I'm like, wait, we're going in there, you know, like, but it was such a gift, really. The whole project, I think, is going to be really well received. And I'm so grateful, you know, for your help and your time. So right now we're in the process of this building of the Seed and Spark campaign, which we'll be kind of promoting at some point in social media, which I know I have to get better at social media in general.
Yeah.
With the podcast and everything. We're great with Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I have to get better with
hey, I mean, the best thing is it might be a gradual growth, but there is growth, and that's better than nothing. And
I always say this ride is going up.
Right, exactly. So, you know, as I definitely wouldn't beat ourselves up about how fast we want it to grow, because I think over time that'll definitely happen. As long as there's growth in general, that's better than nothing.
I agree.
But
we're ready to launch. I mean, that's crazy. We're so close. I mean, we're already into photography, right? We're already into principal photography, but it's really exciting. Well, we have been chatting for a very long time. And Jillian, you know how I feel about you. You've been so amazing with everything. And it's so exciting to watch you grow, to watch Roadhouse Media grow, to grow together. I mean, you know, it's a ride. It's an adventure.
Yes,
and,
I mean, thank you for every opportunity. Like,
oh yeah,
I wouldn't be here, I think, if it wasn't for you and the internships forever ago, it feels like. So I mean, I appreciate being here, and thanks for twisting my arm to get me on.
You're a rock star. You're a rock star.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our podcast to hear more.